So when I was asked to do this talk, I first thought back to my high school year, specifically my senior year. I had no idea what I wanted to do, and I was in the process of applying for colleges. And quick show of hands, how many of you guys are on the same boat? Can't see anyone? That's okay. I asked my guidance counselor for some help, and she said, Steven, what is something you're good at? Maybe that's something you want to major in. And for me, that meant psychology and math. But I didn't want to major in math because it's math, you know? And so I went with psychology instead, you know, not knowing any better. Cool, sorry. Can you go back one? Thanks. The funny thing is, after 4 years of college and 3 classes away from my psych degree, I still don't know what I want to do with my life. But there is a key difference between high school me and college me. I now know what I don't want to do. I know that I don't want to work in a large company where my opinions don't matter. I know that I don't want to work in an office for a typical 9-to-5 job. And more importantly, I know that I don't want to be a psychologist anymore. I want to be out meeting passionate people. I want to do new things and explore new places. And the only reason I know this is because I decided to step outside my comfort zone. I have another question for you guys. And teachers, you might not like this question, but how many of you guys are bored in class? Yes, I'm glad I'm not the only one. It actually happened quite often. And I mean, I've taken some challenging classes before, but I never felt like I was excited for it. I needed something more real. And I've had some internships before, but I didn't feel like I was doing anything meaningful. And I think that's what we all need in our lives. And so that's why I started a nonprofit called Student to Student. In fact, Student to Student was born out of a social entrepreneurship competition at NYU. Basically, Student to Student provides academic resources to rising 8th graders in New York City. And that meant test prep, mentoring. And aside from the typical math and English classes, we also tried to incorporate life skills, things like time management and effective study habits so that we can create more well-rounded students. We launched our program last summer, and we taught 34 kids from all 5 boroughs. And I want to just share some of the photos with you. So this is me during a school visit, and it's kind of dark, but that's Harud in the front. And I wanted to point him out because he kind of reminds me of Kevin Hart. And the only reason why is because he literally looks like Kevin Hart. And this other picture is us on the last day of school. But I want to backtrack a little bit. It's great to talk about the impact that Student to Student had on these kids, but I want to share with you what happens behind the curtains. Before I could help anyone, before I could create this program, I first needed to help myself. You see, we're actually all prisoners. Now, none of us wear orange jumpsuits or live behind bars, but we're prisoners of our comfort zone. Every day, we tell ourselves what we can and what we cannot do. And more often than not, we tell ourselves that we can't do something more times than we tell ourselves we can. Sorry. It happens a lot for me. When I was first entering the competition, I was extremely unsure of my abilities. I wasn't sure that being a psych major, I could compete against business students who were pretty much taught how to build and run a business. But I knew it was time to step out of my comfort zone. I knew that I needed to learn what my weaknesses were and what my strengths were. You see, part of being able to create change in others means being able to start with yourself. And luckily, that competition gave me that opportunity. As part of the competition, I had to attend a series of workshops where I learned how to write a business plan, where I learned how to pitch. And as I'm sure you guys know, public speaking is not something I'm good at. In fact, it's my worst nightmare. But out of the 15 minutes that we were allowed to talk, I was supposed to talk for about 5 minutes. Right before the pitch, I was extremely nervous. My heart was racing, my hands were sweaty, and all I could do was just walk around the room and try and remember the things I needed to say. And when it was finally time for me to talk, I didn't do so well. My voice was shaky and my pitch was going up and down, and I actually forgot some of the things that I needed to say. And afterwards, I felt like it was failure. I just didn't do so well. But you see, no one ever really tells you this, but failure is okay. It's part of the learning process. What is not okay, though, is a fear of failure. I'm sorry, guys. It's kind of ironic because I know I'm standing up here and I'm so nervous. You know what? Doing things that we don't feel comfortable doing actually makes us really nervous, and it's natural. And it's almost like written in our DNA, right? We're always so terrified of making mistakes, of being embarrassed, especially in public. But I want to tell you that even if you are afraid, nervous, don't let that stop you. A lot of people think that stepping outside your comfort zone is about, conquering your fears. But I think it's more about accepting the fear that you have and working with it so that it doesn't stop you from doing what you need to do. So I kind of want to talk about what happens when you move outside your comfort zone. A lot of people think that moving outside your comfort zone is a good thing, and it is. But I also kind of want to talk about how you should expect the unexpected, because when you move outside your comfort zone, it's really similar to sort of going into like uncharted territories, right? You don't know what you're gonna expect. So I actually remember the first time I went hiking when I studied abroad in London. It was with a friend of mine and two other students that I didn't know at the time. We decided to go up to Snowdonia National Park, and it was like 6 hours, no, not 6 hours, but like 3 hours north of London. We decided to go on the hardest hiking trip for some reason. And it ended up being 6 hours long. And since it was the first time I went hiking, I didn't wear the right shoes. And you know what that means? Blisters. And to make things worse, it started raining halfway up. And then it started snowing. And by the time I was done with this hike, I was so exhausted and sore that I could barely move. But you know what? I loved it. If I hadn't gone out of my usual activities and routines, I would have never known that hiking would be one of my favorite things to do. And not only that, I made 2 new friends. In fact, we actually go hiking together every semester. And here's the crazy photo that I took. Now I know this. Now I know that moving out to your comfort zone is supposed to help you, but I can't really tell you how it will help you. That's for you to figure out for yourself. What I can tell you is that you will grow as a person. Now I know this talk is called Escaping Your Comfort Zone, but the thing is, you can't. It exists for a reason. It's where you're comfortable. And as I did more things that were outside my comfort zone, the more my comfort zone grew. As I gave more pitches, hiked more mountains, and did more things that made me nervous, the more my comfort zone grew. And the more it grew, the more comfortable I felt doing other things that were outside my comfort zone. And that's where the magic happens.